Marcus Johnson wiped the sweat from his forehead as he pushed the heavy cart down the long hallway of Westfield University. The wheels squeaked loudly on the polished floor, echoing through the empty building. It was almost 10 o'clock at night, and most students had gone home hours ago. Only a few lights remained on in the physics department, where some professors still worked late into the evening. At 19 years old, Marcus had calloused hands and tired eyes that made him look older than his age. He had been working as a janitor at the university for 8 months now, ever since he graduated from high school. Every night from 6 to midnight, he cleaned classrooms, emptied trash cans, and mopped floors to earn money for his college classes. At the local community college, Marcus never planned to be a janitor. When he was in high school, he dreamed of studying physics at a big university like Westfield. He spent hours reading about black holes, quantum mechanics, and the mysteries of the universe. His high school physics teacher, Mr. Rodriguez, always told him he had a special gift for understanding complex problems. Marcus could solve equations that confused other students, and he could explain difficult concepts in ways that made sense to everyone. But dreams cost money, and Marcus's family did not have much. His mother, Linda Johnson, worked 2 jobs to support Marcus and his younger sister, Amy. She cleaned houses during the day and worked at a grocery store at night. His father had left when Marcus was 12, leaving behind only unpaid bills and broken promises. When Marcus graduated high school, there was no money saved for college tuition, so Marcus made a difficult choice. Instead of going to Westfield University like he wanted, he enrolled in classes at Riverside Community College. The tuition was much cheaper, but he still needed to work to pay for books, supplies, and to help his mother with family expenses. That's how he ended up pushing a janitor's cart through the halls of the university he had once hoped to attend as a student. The irony was not lost on him. Every day he cleaned the very classrooms where students learned the subjects he loved most. He emptied trash cans filled with homework assignments about topics he could solve in his sleep. He mopped floors in laboratories where expensive experiments took place, experiments he could only dream of conducting himself. But Marcus was not bitter. Instead, he saw his job as an opportunity. While he cleaned, he listened to lectures through open doors. When professors left old textbooks in trash cans, he took them home to read. He collected discarded research papers and studied them late at night after finishing his homework for community college. His small apartment was filled with physics books, scientific journals, and notebooks where he worked through complex problems just for fun. Tonight was like any other night. Marcus started his shift by cleaning the main lecture hall where Dr. Richard Hayes taught advanced physics. Dr. Hayes was famous at Westfield University, but not for good reasons. Students and staff whispered about his cruel treatment of anyone he considered beneath him. He made fun of students who asked questions, embarrassed those who made mistakes, and treated service workers like they were invisible. Marcus had encountered Dr. Hayes several times during his months of working at the university. The professor never looked at him directly or acknowledged his presence. To Dr. Hayes, Marcus was just part of the furniture, another piece of equipment needed to keep the building clean. This suited Marcus fine. He preferred to stay invisible and avoid any confrontation with the arrogant professor. As Marcus cleaned the lecture hall, he noticed equations still written on the large whiteboard from Dr. Hayes's evening class. The equations dealt with quantum field theory, a subject Marcus had been teaching himself using textbooks he found in the library. He paused in his cleaning to study the mathematical expressions, working through the logic in his mind. One equation caught his attention. It seemed incomplete, as if Dr. Hayes had been trying to solve a problem but could not finish it. Marcus set down his cleaning supplies and approached the board. He studied the partial solution, recognizing it as a complex problem involving particle interactions. His mind began working through possible approaches to complete the solution. For the next 20 minutes, Marcus forgot about his job completely. He stood in front of the whiteboard, thinking through the mathematical steps needed to solve the equation. He could see several possible methods, each with different advantages and complications. It was like a puzzle that needed to be solved, and Marcus loved puzzles. The sound of voices in the hallway broke his concentration. Marcus quickly returned to his cleaning cart, not wanting to be caught looking at the professor's work. He began wiping down desks, trying to look busy as the voices grew louder. Dr. Hayes entered the classroom with two of his graduate students, Kevin Clark and Rachel Adams. They were deep in discussion about a research problem that had been troubling the entire department for weeks. Marcus kept his head down and continued cleaning, but he could not help listening to their conversation. "The problem is impossible," Kevin was saying. "We've tried every approach we can think of, but nothing works. Maybe the theoretical framework is wrong." Dr. Hayes laughed coldly. "The framework is not wrong, Mr. Clark. Your understanding is limited. This is why only the most brilliant minds can succeed in advanced physics. Perhaps you should consider switching to a less demanding field of study." Rachel shifted uncomfortably. "Professor, we've been working on this for 3 weeks. Even Dr. Martinez from the theoretical physics department couldn't solve it. Maybe we need to approach it differently. Dr. Martinez is competent, but she lacks the innovative thinking required for truly groundbreaking work," Dr. Hayes replied with his usual arrogance. "This problem will separate the future leaders of physics from the mediocre students who will spend their careers teaching high school." Marcus continued cleaning, but his mind was focused on their conversation. He realized they were discussing the same type of problem he had been thinking about while looking at the whiteboard. The incomplete equation Dr. Hayes had written was related to their research challenge. As the three continued talking, Marcus began to understand the full scope of the problem they were trying to solve. It was indeed complex, involving advanced mathematics and deep understanding of quantum mechanics. But as he listened, Marcus could see possible solutions forming in his mind. The approaches they had tried were too traditional, too limited by conventional thinking. Marcus wanted to speak up, to share his ideas about how the problem might be solved, but he knew better. He was just a janitor to these people, someone whose opinion would never be valued or even heard. So he remained silent, cleaning around them as they continued their discussion, unaware that the solution they desperately sought was walking among them with a mop and bucket. Marcus was wiping down the last row of desks when Dr. Hayes noticed him for the first time that evening. The professor stopped talking mid-sentence and stared at Marcus with cold, calculating eyes. A slow smile spread across Dr. Hayes's face, but it was not a kind smile. It was the smile of someone who had just thought of a cruel joke. "Well, well," Dr. Hayes said loudly, making sure Kevin and Rachel could hear every word. "It seems we have an audience for our discussion. Tell me, janitor, how long have you been listening to our conversation?" Marcus looked up from his cleaning, his heart starting to beat faster. He had hoped to finish his work and leave without being noticed, but now Dr. Hayes was looking directly at him with obvious displeasure. Marcus knew this could not end well. "I'm just cleaning, sir," Marcus said quietly, keeping his voice respectful. "I didn't mean to disturb you." Dr. Hayes laughed, but there was no humor in the sound. "Disturb us? Oh, you're not disturbing us at all. In fact, I think you might be exactly what we need right now. You see, we've been discussing a very complex physics problem, and my graduate students seem to be having difficulty understanding it." Kevin and Rachel exchanged worried glances. They both knew Dr. Hayes well enough to recognize when he was about to do something cruel. Kevin started to speak up, but Dr. Hayes raised his hand to silence him. "Since you were so interested in our conversation," Dr. Hayes continued, his voice dripping with false politeness, "perhaps you would like to help us solve this problem. After all, you must have learned quite a bit about physics while emptying our trash cans and mopping our floors." Marcus felt his face grow hot with embarrassment. He could see what Dr. Hayes was trying to do. The professor wanted to humiliate him in front of the graduate students to make himself feel superior by showing how much smarter he was than a simple janitor. Marcus knew he should just apologize and leave, but something inside him refused to back down. "I don't want to waste your time, Professor," Marcus said, still trying to be polite despite the insult. "I should finish my work and let you continue your discussion." But Dr. Hayes was not finished with his game. He walked over to the whiteboard where the incomplete equation was still written and picked up a marker. With dramatic flourishes, he began writing out a complex mathematical problem, filling the entire board with symbols, numbers, and Greek letters. "This," Dr. Hayes announced proudly, is the problem that has been challenging our brightest graduate students for the past 3 weeks. It involves advanced quantum field theory, something that takes years of intensive study to understand. But perhaps your experience with cleaning supplies has given you some insight into particle interactions. Rachel looked uncomfortable and started to say something, but Dr. Hayes cut her off with a sharp look. Kevin clenched his fists at his sides, clearly angry at his professor's behavior, but afraid to speak up and make things worse for himself. Marcus stared at the equation on the whiteboard. Despite Dr. Hayes's cruel intentions, Marcus could not help being interested in the problem itself. It was indeed complex, involving the interaction of subatomic particles in ways that required deep understanding of both mathematics and physics. But as he studied the symbols and numbers, patterns began to emerge in his mind. "Come on," Dr. Hayes said, tapping the board with his marker. "Don't be shy. Surely someone with your extensive education can tell us something about quantum mechanics. Maybe you learned about it in high school between your janitorial training courses." The insult stung, but Marcus found himself stepping closer to the whiteboard. He could see several approaches to solving the problem, each with different advantages and complications. His mind was already working through the mathematical steps, organizing the solution in a logical sequence. "I can see you're thinking hard," Dr. Hayes said with mock encouragement. "Take your time. After all, this problem has only stumped students with advanced degrees in physics. I'm sure you'll crack it any moment now." Kevin finally found his courage. "Professor Hayes, maybe we should—" "Quiet, Mr. Clark," Dr. Hayes snapped. "Our janitor friend seems eager to demonstrate his expertise. Who are we to deny him this opportunity to shine?" Marcus knew he was being set up for public humiliation. Dr. Hayes expected him to look at the problem, admit he could not understand it, and walk away in shame. The professor would then use this moment to lecture his graduate students about the difference between real education and pretending to be smart. But Marcus also knew something Dr. Hayes did not know. He understood the problem on the board. Not only could he understand it, but he could solve it. The question was whether he should. If he walked away now, Dr. Hayes would get his moment of cruel triumph, but Marcus would avoid creating a bigger scene. He could finish his cleaning job, go home, and try to forget this embarrassing encounter. That would be the safe choice, the smart choice for someone in his position. But if he stayed and tried to solve the problem, several things could happen. He might make a mistake and prove Dr. Hayes right about his ignorance. Even worse, he might solve it correctly and create an even bigger problem for himself. What would happen to a janitor who showed up a famous professor in front of his students? Marcus looked at Kevin and Rachel, both of whom were watching him with a mixture of sympathy and curiosity. They seemed like decent people who were uncomfortable with their professor's behavior. Kevin had even tried to defend him, which took courage considering Dr. Hayes's reputation for revenge against students who crossed him. Then Marcus looked at Dr. Hayes, who was standing beside the whiteboard with his arms crossed, waiting for Marcus to admit defeat. The professor's face showed complete confidence that he was about to witness the humiliation of someone he considered beneath his notice. That decided it for Marcus. He had spent his whole life being underestimated because of his circumstances. Teachers had low expectations because he came from a poor family. Classmates assumed he was not smart because he wore old clothes and could not afford the latest textbooks. Now this professor was trying to humiliate him simply because he cleaned floors for a living. Marcus set down his cleaning supplies and walked over to the whiteboard. He picked up a marker and began to study the equation more carefully, working through the logic in his mind. Behind him, he could hear Dr. Hayes chuckling softly, apparently delighted that his victim was about to make a fool of himself. "Take all the time you need," Dr. Hayes said. "I'm sure the solution will come to you eventually. After all, how hard can advanced quantum field theory really be?" Marcus stood in front of the whiteboard, marker in hand, studying the complex equation that had stumped graduate students for 3 weeks. Dr. Hayes continued making jokes behind him, clearly enjoying what he thought would be Marcus's inevitable failure. Kevin and Rachel watched in uncomfortable silence, both feeling sorry for Marcus but not knowing how to help him. "Any day now," Dr. Hayes said with a laugh. "Unless you need me to explain what those symbols mean." I know they don't teach advanced mathematics in janitor school." Marcus ignored the insult and focused on the problem. In his mind, he began breaking down the equation into smaller parts. He could see that the previous attempts had all followed the same basic approach, which was why they had all failed. The problem required a different way of thinking, something that textbooks did not usually teach. Slowly, Marcus began to write on the whiteboard. His first few marks were small, just notes in the corner to help him organize his thoughts. Dr. Hayes stopped talking and moved closer, curious to see what nonsense the janitor was writing. But as Marcus continued writing, Dr. Hayes' expression began to change. The symbols and numbers Marcus was putting on the board were not random scribbles. They were legitimate mathematical expressions, written with the confidence of someone who truly understood what he was doing. "Wait," Dr. Hayes said, his voice losing some of its mockery. "What are you doing there?" Marcus did not answer. He was too focused on the problem to pay attention to anything else. He erased part of the original equation and rewrote it using a different mathematical framework. Instead of approaching the particle interactions from the traditional angle, he was using a method that combined ideas from different areas of physics. Kevin stepped closer to the board, his mouth falling open as he recognized what Marcus was doing. That's the Lagrangian approach, but modified with..." He stopped talking, too amazed to finish his sentence. Rachel joined Kevin near the board, both graduate students now completely focused on Marcus's work. They had never seen this particular method used for this type of problem. It was creative, innovative, and most importantly, it seemed to be working. Marcus continued writing, filling more of the whiteboard with calculations. His approach was unusual but mathematically sound. He was solving the problem step by step, showing his work clearly so that anyone could follow his reasoning. Each line of mathematics flowed logically from the previous one, building toward a complete solution. Dr. Hayes stood frozen in the middle of the classroom, watching his cruel joke transform into something he had never expected. The janitor he had tried to humiliate was not only understanding the advanced physics problem, but solving it in a way that none of his graduate students had thought to try. "This is impossible," Dr. Hayes whispered, but his voice carried no confidence. "Now." He moved closer to the board, studying Marcus's work with growing amazement and horror. Marcus reached a critical point in his solution where he needed to make a complex calculation involving multiple variables. Without hesitation, he worked through the mathematics in his head, writing down the result and continuing with the next step. Kevin pulled out his phone and quickly checked the calculation using a scientific app. "He's right," Kevin said in amazement. "That calculation is correct." Marcus was now about halfway through solving the complete problem. His method was becoming clearer to the graduate students, who began to understand the brilliance of his approach. He was using techniques from 3 different areas of physics, combining them in a way that none of them had considered. "Where did you learn to do this?" Rachel asked, her voice full of wonder. Marcus paused in his writing for the first time since he started. He turned to look at Rachel, then at Kevin, and finally at Dr. Hayes. The professor's face had gone completely white, and his earlier arrogance had been replaced by shock and disbelief. "I taught myself," Marcus said simply. "I read physics books and worked through problems at home. This type of problem is similar to others I've seen before." Dr. Hayes found his voice again, but it was shaky and uncertain. "You taught yourself quantum field theory? That's impossible. It takes years of formal education to understand these concepts." Marcus shrugged and turned back to the whiteboard. "I've been studying physics since I was in middle school. I read every book I can find and practice solving problems every night. The math is not that different from other areas of physics once you understand the basic principles." He continued working on the solution, now approaching the final steps. Kevin and Rachel watched every move he made, both of them learning from his unique approach. They realized that Marcus was not just solving the problem, but solving it in a way that was more elegant and efficient than anything they had attempted. As Marcus wrote the final lines of his solution, the room became completely silent. Even Dr. Hayes stopped making comments and just stared at the whiteboard in amazement. The complex problem that had frustrated the entire physics department for weeks was now solved. clearly and completely. Marcus set down the marker and stepped back from the board. The whiteboard was covered with mathematical expressions, but they all flowed together in a logical sequence that led to a definitive answer. The solution was not only correct, but it was presented in a way that anyone with basic physics knowledge could understand and verify. Kevin was the first to break the silence. "This is incredible. Marcus, how long did it take you to figure this out?" "I started thinking about it when I saw the incomplete equation earlier tonight," Marcus replied. "The approach came to me while I was listening to your discussion. You were trying to solve it using traditional methods, but this type of problem needs a different framework." Rachel walked up to the board and began checking Marcus's work line by line. After several minutes, she turned to face the others with a huge smile on her face. "It's perfect. Every step is correct, and the final answer makes complete sense." Dr. Hayes finally found his voice, but he sounded like a different person than the arrogant professor who had been mocking Marcus minutes earlier. "I don't understand. How is this possible? You're a janitor. You never went to graduate school. You don't have advanced degrees in physics." Marcus looked directly at Dr. Hayes for the first time that evening. "Degrees don't solve problems, Professor. Understanding does. And understanding comes from curiosity, practice, and hard work, not from looking down on other people." The truth of Marcus's words hung in the air like a challenge. Dr. Hayes had built his entire career on the belief that formal education and institutional prestige were the only paths to real knowledge. But standing in front of him was proof that brilliant minds could emerge from anywhere, even from behind a janitor's cart. Kevin started asking Marcus technical questions about his solution, genuinely eager to learn from his innovative approach. Rachel joined the discussion, and soon all three were deep in conversation about advanced physics concepts. Dr. Hayes stood apart from them, struggling to process what had just happened to his carefully constructed worldview. Word spread through Westfield University faster than Marcus could have imagined. By the next morning, half the physics department had heard about the janitor who solved the impossible problem. Kevin and Rachel had stayed up all night discussing Marcus's solution with other graduate students, and soon everyone was talking about the brilliant young man who worked the night shift. Marcus arrived at his community college classes that morning feeling strange and confused. He had barely slept after the encounter with Dr. Hayes, replaying the evening over and over in his mind. Part of him felt proud that he had proven himself capable of solving advanced problems, but another part worried about what would happen next. He was still just a janitor, and Dr. Hayes was still a powerful professor who could make his life difficult. At Westfield University, Dr. Lisa Martinez was having her morning coffee when Kevin Clark knocked on her office door. Dr. Martinez was the head of the physics department, a respected scientist who had built her reputation through fair dealing and genuine care for her students. She was also one of the few professors who treated the university staff with respect and kindness. "Dr. Martinez, I need to tell you about something incredible that happened last night," Kevin said, barely able to contain his excitement. Dr. Martinez invited him to sit down and listened carefully as Kevin described the entire encounter between Marcus and Dr. Hayes. She asked detailed questions about Marcus's solution and requested to see photos that Rachel had taken of the whiteboard before anyone erased it. As Kevin talked, Dr. Martinez felt a mixture of amazement and anger. She was amazed by the story of Marcus's brilliant problem-solving, but angry about Dr. Hayes's cruel treatment of a university employee. She had heard complaints about Dr. Hayes's behavior before, but this incident crossed a line that she could not ignore. "I want to meet this young man immediately," Dr. Martinez said. "Do you know how I can contact him?" Kevin provided Marcus's work schedule, and Dr. Martinez decided to visit the physics building that evening to speak with him personally. She spent the rest of the day reviewing the photos of Marcus's solution and consulting with other professors about the mathematical approach he had used. Meanwhile, Dr. Hayes was having the worst day of his career. News of the previous night's events had reached his colleagues, and many of them were asking uncomfortable questions about his treatment of Marcus. Some professors who had never liked Dr. Hayes's arrogant attitude were openly criticizing his behavior. During his afternoon lecture, Dr. Hayes found it difficult to concentrate. His students seemed distracted, and he suspected they had heard about the incident with the janitor. For the first time in years, Dr. Hayes felt uncertain about his position and reputation at the university. That evening, Marcus returned to work, as usual, pushing his cart through the familiar hallways of the physics building. He hoped the previous night had been forgotten, and that he could return to his quiet routine of cleaning and studying. But as soon as he entered the building, he realized things had changed. Several graduate students approached him to ask questions about his solution method. They were polite and respectful, genuinely interested in learning from his approach to the problem. Marcus found himself explaining advanced physics concepts to students who had years more formal education than he did. "Marcus, your method was so creative," said a graduate student named Peter. "Where did you learn to combine those different approaches?" "I read a lot of different textbooks," Marcus replied. "Sometimes the best solutions come from mixing ideas from different areas of physics. Most textbooks only show one way to solve problems, but there are usually several ways that work." As Marcus talked with the students, Dr. Martinez appeared in the hallway. She had been waiting patiently for him to finish his conversation before introducing herself. When the students noticed her, they quickly made room for the department head to speak with Marcus. "You must be Marcus Johnson," Dr. Martinez said with a warm smile. "I'm Dr. Martinez, the head of the physics department. I was wondering if we could talk privately for a few minutes." Marcus felt nervous but agreed to follow Dr. Martinez to her office. As they walked through the building, he noticed other professors and students watching him with curiosity and respect. It was a strange feeling for someone who was used to being invisible. In her office, Dr. Martinez offered Marcus a seat and asked him to tell her about his background and education. Marcus explained his situation honestly, describing his family's financial struggles and his decision to attend community college while working as a janitor. "Kevin showed me photos of your solution," Dr. Martinez said. "I've been studying physics for 20 years, and I've never seen that particular approach used for that type of problem. It was truly brilliant work." Marcus felt embarrassed by the praise. "I just tried to think about it differently than the way textbooks usually show. Sometimes when you're not trained to think only one way, you can see other possibilities." Dr. Martinez nodded thoughtfully. "That's exactly the kind of fresh thinking our department needs. Marcus, I want to offer you something, but I need you to think carefully before you answer." She explained that Westfield University had scholarship programs for exceptional students who showed outstanding potential in scientific fields. Based on his demonstrated ability, she was prepared to offer Marcus a full scholarship to transfer to Westfield and pursue a bachelor's degree in physics. "But that's not all," Dr. Martinez continued. "I would also like to offer you a position as a research assistant. You would work directly with our faculty on advanced projects, and you would receive a salary that would allow you to support yourself and help your family." Marcus sat in stunned silence, unable to believe what he was hearing. The opportunity Dr. Martinez was describing was beyond his wildest dreams. To study at Westfield University, to work on real research projects, to be paid for doing the thing he loved most in the world. "I don't know what to say," Marcus finally managed. "This is incredible, but I'm not sure I'm qualified. I'm just a community college student." "Marcus," Dr. Martinez said firmly, "you solved a problem that stumped our graduate students for weeks. You did it in less than an hour using methods that none of our faculty had considered. If that doesn't qualify you for advanced study, then our entire educational system needs to be reconsidered." She gave Marcus time to think about the offer, encouraging him to discuss it with his family before making a decision. As Marcus left her office, his head was spinning with possibilities he had never dared to imagine. On his way out of the building, Marcus encountered Dr. Hayes in the hallway. The professor looked uncomfortable and avoided eye contact at first, but then seemed to force himself to speak. "Johnson," Dr. Hayes said quietly, "I owe you an apology. My behavior last night was inappropriate and unprofessional. Your work on that problem was exceptional." Marcus could see that the apology was difficult for Dr. Hayes to make, and he appreciated the effort. "Thank you, Professor. I understand that you were just testing me." Dr. Hayes shook his head. "No, I was trying to humiliate you because of my own prejudices and insecurities. What you did last night taught me something important about assumptions and respect. As Marcus walked home that night, he thought about how much his life had changed in just 24 hours. Yesterday, he was an invisible janitor with secret dreams of becoming a physicist. Today, he was being offered the chance to make those dreams come true at one of the country's best universities. Marcus spent 3 sleepless nights thinking about Dr. Martinez's offer. The opportunity was everything he had ever dreamed of, but it also scared him. What if he failed? What if he could not keep up with students who had attended expensive private schools and had tutors their whole lives? What if solving one physics problem had been just luck? On Thursday evening, Marcus sat at his kitchen table with his mother and sister, discussing the decision that would change all their lives. His mother, Linda, had been cleaning houses for 12 hours and looked exhausted, but her eyes were bright, with pride and excitement. "Marcus, this is your chance," she said, reaching across the table to squeeze his hand. "I've watched you study physics books every night since you were 14 years old. I've seen you work math problems for fun while other kids played video games. This is what you were meant to do." His sister Amy, now 16 and a junior in high school, was even more direct. "Are you crazy? A full scholarship to Westfield University? Most people would give anything for this chance. You have to say yes." But Marcus still had doubts. What if I'm not smart enough? What if I embarrass myself in front of all those professors and students who went to the best schools? Linda looked at her son with the firm expression she used when she needed him to listen carefully. "Marcus Johnson, you are the smartest person I know. You taught yourself more about physics than most college graduates ever learn. Don't let fear stop you from becoming who you're supposed to be." The next morning, Marcus called Dr. Martinez and accepted her offer. She was delighted and immediately began arranging his transfer to Westfield University for the spring semester, which would begin in just 6 weeks. The transition was not easy. Marcus had to withdraw from his community college classes, complete paperwork for his scholarship, and prepare to enter a much more demanding academic environment. But Dr. Martinez assigned Kevin Clark to help him get ready, and Kevin became both a mentor and a friend. "The most important thing to remember," Kevin told Marcus during one of their study sessions, "is that you belong here. You proved that the night you solved our impossible problem. Don't let anyone make you feel like you don't deserve this opportunity." Marcus's first day as a Westfield University student was terrifying and exciting. He walked through the same hallways he had cleaned for 8 months, but now he carried textbooks instead of cleaning supplies. Some of the staff members who remembered him as a janitor smiled and congratulated him on his scholarship. His first physics class was Advanced Quantum Mechanics, taught by Dr. Sarah Williams, one of the most respected professors in the department. Marcus sat in the back of the classroom, feeling nervous among students who seemed so confident and well prepared. But when Dr. Williams began discussing quantum field theory, Marcus found himself raising his hand to ask questions and offer insights. His unique approach to problems impressed both the professor and his classmates. By the end of the first week, other students were asking Marcus to join their study groups. The most surprising change came from Dr. Hayes. The arrogant professor, who had tried to humiliate Marcus, now went out of his way to treat him with respect. During faculty meetings, Dr. Hayes often mentioned Marcus's innovative problem-solving methods and suggested that other professors could learn from his approaches. One afternoon, Dr. Hayes stopped Marcus in the hallway and asked if they could talk privately. In his office, the professor looked uncomfortable but determined to say what was on his mind. "Marcus, I've been doing a lot of thinking since that night you solved our research problem," Dr. Hayes began. "I realize that my behavior toward you and toward many other people has been wrong. I've spent my career believing that intelligence and worth could be measured by degrees and social status." He paused, looking out his office window before continuing. "You taught me that brilliant minds exist everywhere, and that true education means staying open to learning from anyone. I want to ask if you would be willing to work with me on a research project. I think your fresh perspective could help me approach problems in new ways." Marcus was amazed by the request. The same professor who had mocked him was now asking to learn from him. "I would be honored to work with you, Professor Hayes." Their collaboration proved to be extremely productive. Marcus's unconventional methods complemented Dr. Hayes's extensive theoretical knowledge, and together they made significant progress on several difficult problems. Dr. Hayes began incorporating Marcus's teaching methods into his own classes, encouraging students to think creatively rather than just memorizing formulas. As the semester progressed, Marcus's reputation grew throughout the physics department. His research assistant work with Dr. Martinez led to discoveries that caught the attention of scientists at other universities. By the end of his first year at Westfield, Marcus had co-authored 2 research papers that were published in respected scientific journals. The transformation was complete when Marcus was invited to present his research at the National Physics Conference in Chicago. Standing at the podium in front of hundreds of scientists, Marcus felt a moment of disbelief. Just 2 years earlier, he had been emptying trash cans and mopping floors. Now he was sharing his discoveries with some of the most brilliant minds in the field. His presentation was a huge success. Several professors from other universities approached him afterward to discuss collaboration opportunities. A few even offered him positions in their graduate programs when he completed his bachelor's degree. In the audience, Dr. Martinez watched with pride as her former janitor received applause from the scientific community. Beside her, Dr. Hayes clapped enthusiastically, genuinely happy to see Marcus succeed. After the conference, Marcus called his mother to share the good news. Linda cried with joy as he described the response to his presentation and the opportunities that were opening up for his future. "I'm so proud of you," she said through her tears. "But I'm not surprised. I always knew you were special." Marcus returned to Westfield University with new confidence and excitement about his future. He continued his research work while maintaining excellent grades in all his classes. Kevin, who had become his closest friend, often joked that Marcus was making the rest of them look bad with his innovative solutions to complex problems. The story that had begun with cruelty and prejudice had transformed into one of opportunity and growth. Marcus had proven that talent and intelligence could emerge from any background, while Dr. Hayes had learned the importance of treating all people with respect and keeping an open mind. As Marcus walked across the Westfield University campus on a beautiful spring morning, carrying his physics textbooks and heading to another day of classes and research, he reflected on how much his life had changed. He was no longer the invisible janitor with secret dreams. He was Marcus Johnson, physics student and researcher with a brilliant future ahead of him, and the knowledge that hard work and determination could overcome any obstacle. The young man who had once pushed a cleaning cart through these hallways was now pushing the boundaries of scientific knowledge, proving that genius truly could be found anywhere.